Hey guys, it's Walker Dybel, author of Buy Then Build and creator of the Acquisition Lab. Today, we're going to talk about the drawbacks and benefits of hiring a general manager or a president or a COO to run the business that you acquire for you, as well as the two things you need to do in order to get it done successfully. So without a doubt, one of the most common questions I get every single time we run a new cohort through the Acquisition Lab is along these lines. Walker, how do I hire somebody to go in and run the business for me? How can I be an absentee owner? And the thing that I want to highlight first is that this is not, I don't recommend that you do this on a first go, right? Or if you're going to do this, you probably want to adjust the type of business that you're looking for. In other words, I think that, there's inherent risks to absentee ownership. And probably the biggest one is a bit intangible, but it's around leadership, right? It's about, implementation of a strategy and a culture. And, a business typically takes on the personality of its leader. And so if you're not the leader and it's going to be somebody you hire or outsource, you've just got to make sure you do a good job. And I think that the first time that you do a business acquisition, what I always recommend is you buy 100% of that business and you run it as CEO for at least 7 years, okay? I did end up acquiring 7 companies over about 10 years, but I acquired 6 of them in the last 3, okay? So just to give a little perspective on that. So here are the drawbacks to doing this. Number one is you need to be comfortable giving control to someone else on a business that very likely has your personal guarantee on all the leverage, right? So a lot of what we do in the Buy Then Build model and in the Acquisition Lab, it's not necessarily going out and running an independent sponsorship or raising equity to acquire a business, right? It's not necessarily a private equity move in that regard. And instead, it's simply understanding that, due to trends in the SBA and other debt vehicles, that we can acquire these businesses based on, existing earnings, right? And so the thing is sometimes the SBA will loan up to 90% of the complete acquisition, right? So the money's there, okay? If you're comfortable taking on that much debt and you believe that you're buying the right business that you can grow, it kind of starts to borderline on no-brainer, right? There's always going to be things outside of your control, but if you've got the right mindset, the right drive, and understand the model, you can get confidence in this and build a business successfully. So we like to use leverage because it's available, right? And what I've noticed is that when you have a personal guarantee on something, what are the odds that you're going to not complete this task, right? I think it was Jim Collins who said, if you've got this in Beyond Entrepreneurship, if you've got this like insurmountable climb of a mountain that you have to do, and there's like a really easy path sort of like back to your car, what are the odds that you're actually going to get that done, right? They're approaching 0. But once you eliminate that path and you have to get over this thing, it starts approaching 100%. And in the SBA business acquisition profile, we find that for decades, it's been less than 1.7% default rate. The number one lender that I've done more transactions with, even as a broker, than anyone else, has had 1 default out of his entire career, and he's number 1 in a certain segment of acquisitions. So hiring someone that's not you, that doesn't share that personal guarantee, and putting them in that role, they're simply not going to have the same conviction as you. They will always have this sort of like easy path back to the car should the going get tough. Okay, and so you need to understand that. Number 2. Because they're not as committed, they might quit. So in other words, I was doing exactly this in a company that I owned, and the general manager, started receiving job offers from other people. And at first it was easy for him to turn down, but ultimately they got to the point where, there was another company, it was owned by a father and son, and the father had a heart attack and ended up, in the hospital, ultimately calling my general manager and saying, listen, what's it gonna take? And he just said, something along the lines of, ridiculous number and et cetera, and all of it was sort of granted. I would have done the same thing if I were in his shoes. So would you. You cannot blame him. And so the thing is that like part of what we do is we hire these people so we don't have to spend time in the business, but yet one of these days can come along and all of a sudden you've got a very massive special project on your hands that you need to deal with, okay? Number 3 is hiring is challenging. especially when you're hiring a big role or something at the top, right? Someone at the top. And so, a mishire, if you hire someone who doesn't have the right skill set, who can't execute, who isn't good with these types of people that are the employees or the customers or whatever it is, not only can it cost you like hundreds of thousands of dollars or more if you buy a huge company, but the point is it's going to be a huge drain of cash, okay? And it can completely derail your business strategy, okay? So because of all of these risks, you got to be really careful with these strategies. And I think that, if you're going to acquire a business with personally guaranteed debt, you really should do it because it's your skill set and it's the thing that you bring to the table. It's the business plus you, right? It's one of the things we always talk about in the lab. So all of that being said, now let's talk about the benefits. The benefits are, number one, you get to leverage your time. So one of the things that I did when I bought all of these companies was I sort of started thinking that, because I was acquiring these businesses with debt, I wasn't needing a whole lot of cash in order to build sort of like the smallest, private equity firm you've never heard of, right? Like a series of different businesses. And I had 6 companies. Some or most of them had merged together, and so in 3 different verticals, okay, running at the same exact time. And I was able to do that because I was able to leverage other general managers in certain companies, okay? So the fact of the matter is I own 2 companies right now. One of them I do manage outright. This doesn't include the lab, by the way. These are companies I've acquired. One I manage completely. The other one is a manufacturing company. And, we've got, let's categorize them as blue collar workers. We've got white collar workers. We have residential customers. We've got B2B or other business customers, right? Who are repeat and bigger customers. The company's growing, 10 to 25+% year over year, okay? I would not be able to be here shooting a video, growing my hair out if I was managing that company, okay? Instead, I get to do things like write books, start another company on the side, run a different business, and all the while, number 2, the second benefit, I get to maximize my return, okay? And so in other words, as we've discussed, the returns in the private capital market are larger than any other asset class and has been that way for decades, okay? And so the thing is that like not only did I acquire one business that I operate, I've also acquired another business that I don't operate. And so it allows me to sort of act as a chairman and kind of do, our rhythm is more like a monthly visit and then a quarterly strategy meeting is kind of how we do it. So it's sort of like, I help set the vision and I help keep my general manager accountable, but I'm not required to spend my time in the day-to-day, but all the while, I own effectively, no, I don't know. I brought in an investor along the way. So I own 81% of that firm, okay? And so I'm building up equity, we're getting, cash returns and we're growing. And so it's a wonderful way to sort of expand beyond you, okay? Number 3, is you can provide a great opportunity for others, okay? So, the general managers that I've always hired are people that are very effective at leading teams, at managing companies, building organizations, okay? They don't have the same risk profile that I do. They don't say, listen, I know I'm capable of doing this. I'm totally comfortable running out and taking a, 80 to 90% loan to acquire this business. So instead, I'm the one that does that. I'm the entrepreneur, and they get to come in as the manager and help me execute, okay? And by doing that, they're doing what they do best, and they're getting a great opportunity to lead and manage a small business in a way that they probably wouldn't get anywhere else, right? So let's talk about the 2 best practices that I'm going to throw out at you, okay? Number 1 is, actually I can come up with 3 right now, okay? Number 1 is, in Buy Then Build, we use the prep funnel, right? The 3 A's, attitude, aptitude, action. When you make that hire, you've got to make sure that the target, the business that you're acquiring, actually aligns with the 3 A's of the person that you're putting in place. In other words, please do not acquire a company and then like go out and put a listing for a job listing out on the internet, okay, and meet people for the first time. I want you to already know. I want you to build a bench of managers ahead of time so that when the opportunities pop up, you know which person you need to recruit to throw in at the opportunity. That's actually critical. And then it should be the number one best practice. I just made that up. Not really, but you know. Number two is this. Hire for these things: intelligence, drive, and integrity. Okay? I think it was Warren Buffett who said, I hire for these three things: intelligence, drive, and integrity. All right? And integrity has to be one of them. Pick two. Okay? It's really, really rare to find all three of those things. But if you've got someone who has integrity, who has that loyalty, who has that honesty, then they will be a good part of your team. Okay? And then they'll either be driven or they'll be intelligent, and so they'll be able to figure it out, right? If you have someone who is driven and intelligent but doesn't have a high level of integrity, they may end up taking advantage of you. I've risked being in that situation myself. We'll save that story not for this video that is going to be out on the internet. But the point is that like you want to be hiring based on those three things, okay? And three is, this is maybe the big one. I do not give equity, okay, ever. If I've got a business that I've acquired, the odds that I have personally guaranteed debt on that business acquisition are high. Even if I don't have personally guaranteed debt, which I do on every company I've acquired, it's you still owe it, okay? Whether or not that PG is there or not is frankly a technicality. The minute someone gives you money, even if it's an institution, you owe it back. That's your responsibility. You have to do it. Now, if you give somebody equity, okay, if I say, hey, manager, come on in, here's, 20% equity, I want you to manage my company for me, see you later, okay? It kind of goes back to those three drawbacks that we talked about in the beginning. Number one, you've got to be comfortable giving control to someone who doesn't have that personal guarantee on the liabilities. Number two, they're not as committed as you, and they might eventually quit and walk away with equity in your company. You don't want someone walking away with 20% equity in your company. And three, hiring is hard, and you might make a mishire, okay? In all three of those situations, they end up either wrecking the company or leaving, and they walk out the door with 20% of your company. Don't ever do that, okay? Now, the solution in sort of the startup world is, hey, let's do a vesting schedule, and we will get you equity, but we're gonna vest it over a period of time. Nope, still can't do that. And the reason why is for the same exact reason. Even if I stretch it out over a decade, okay, let's just say I'm gonna give them 20%, we're gonna vest it over a decade. Even you've gotta have milestones in there to make it real, right? So assuming we get to, year 5, they might own 10% of your company, which opens up the door to the same risk we've had before. Here's how I solve it. The way that I've always approached this is phantom stock, okay? In other words, think about it like this. When you own equity in a company, there's really only two ways that it benefits you. Number one might be if there's a whole bunch of people involved and like there's politics and there's a big board of directors and all the rest of it, and you need to sort of, jockey for power or whatever, okay? That's usually not happening in these smaller companies. It does. I've been in those situations, but that's a story for a different time. And the bigger one is that the day that the company sells, okay, is the day that all of the benefit of ownership comes to you. In fact, it's estimated to be 50% of all of the financial benefit of owning a business comes in the day that you sell. Okay, and so you're not going to die with your business. You might. Okay, but the point is the day's going to come eventually that you need to sell. I'm not talking about flipping businesses. I'm just talking about even if you run your whole career and you work for 25, 30 years at one company, eventually you're going to sell that company. That's the big payday, right? And so the point is that that's the day that having the stock actually counts, actually matters. And so phantom stock, what it does is it says, listen, I'm not going to actually give you stock, but here's an agreement that we have that basically signals that you have this 20%, okay? And I'm using 20% in these examples, by the way, because it's the standard textbook private equity, okay? In a search fund, based on milestones, they can earn up to sometimes a little above 20%, but 20% is a pretty good peg for someone who performs, okay, in running a company. And so so let's use that number. It's a very comfortable number, and I think it's actually textbook correct. But there's a whole nother video on that. But the point is that I'm going to give you 20% phantom stock, meaning on the day we sell the business, whether that be tomorrow or in 20 years, okay, there's going to be the sort of, think about it as proceeds that come in from the sale. Then there's going to be expenses that deal with the sale, say, the legal expenses, the M&A advisor fees, maybe the CPA, I don't know. And so you're going to have these expenses that sort of pull that number down, okay? You can think of that almost as like the gross proceeds, I guess. Well, that'd be gross net proceeds, but it's still not the net benefit because you've got to subtract out any liabilities that you have, okay? You're likely selling accounts receivable, minus accounts payable plus inventory. We talk about that a lot. But you're going to have other liabilities, say for example, an SBA loan that was used to acquire the business. Okay, so you run the business for 7 years. You've got to a point where that debt is now sitting at 25% of what it was when you took it out. So you bought a company for $1 million. Now the debt's sitting at debt principal balance is sitting at $250,000. You were able to grow that business, and now you've got $5 million in revenue, say. Okay, and so we're selling it. Let's just loose math, 1x revenue, so we're selling it for $5 million. Let's just say we're going to spend $500,000 on broker fees and attorneys and all the rest of it. Then we need to subtract that $250,000. Okay. You as the owner then get to take 20% of those proceeds, pay it to your manager. Okay, and it becomes an additional expense that lowers your taxable gain when you take 80% of the total net benefit of that transaction to you. So you see, you're able to promise all of the benefits of equity without necessarily taking all of the risk on. At the same time, along the way, I have made offers to my managers along the lines of the minute that all of the debt is paid down, I will then give you 20% of the company. I have done this before. And the other one is once I've worked with someone for a certain period of time, let's call it 5 years, I will tell them all they need to do is sign on the personal guarantee with me, and we can go ahead and trigger that percentage ownership, right? And so that way I know that they're as committed as I am, and I get to eliminate that first and number one risk, which is that easy path back to the car. And I know that they're there with me climbing the mountain, okay? Thanks a lot. Listen, if you are interested in buying a company in the next 12 to 18 months, this is why we started the Acquisition Lab. On the one hand, you can read, Buy Then Build, you can read the Harvard Business Review Guide to Buying a Small Business and go out there and do it yourself. You can go hire a buy-side advisor and pay them $150,000 on $1 million transaction if you want, okay? Acquisition Lab is a do-it-with-you buy-side advisory service. We've got world-class education, coaching, a suite of tools, and a vetted community. Only about 12% of applicants are actually accepted into the lab. Again, don't let that scare you. If you are a capable entrepreneur with access to even just a little bit of capital or know how to get it, you will get in. Thanks so much. Hope this was helpful. Good luck, and check out acquisitionlab.com, and I look forward to seeing your application soon. Bye.